Hi everyone, in this video I'm just going to show you through a few simple modifications how to create a fur-lined denim jacket. So for this example we are going to line the collar and the front facing with fur. The interior body of the jacket will not be lined. So to do this we just have a few simple modifications to the front pattern pieces that we need to make adjustments to before we go cut out all the pattern pieces for the entire jacket. So to do this easily, I have two sets of the front yoke and the inside front printed out. And I'm going to modify these so that I have a new set of pattern pieces for the denim fabric and then a new set of pattern pieces for the facing fabric. So to make these modifications, we are going to use this fold line as our new seam line where we are going to sew the fur facing to the denim fabric. So to make these changes on the denim fabric pieces, I simply need to trim off just so that I have a 1/4 inch seam allowance extending to the right of this fold line. So again, the fold line will become the seam line, and then I'm just going to mark a new cut line on my pattern pieces. So I have this extending a 1/4 inch past my fold line, and I will just draw right on there a new cut line. So here I have my seam allowance cut line. So then I would just go ahead and change this pattern piece. So now I will stitch on the fold line and I'll cut this out as is on the denim fabric. And then same for this front yoke. This will become the pattern piece that I'll use to cut the denim. Then to create the facing piece, we're going to do one additional change because we don't need this seam line on the interior side. So we're going to go ahead and trim off the seam allowance on one of these pieces and then overlap them on this stitching line to create one solid piece. Then I'm going to make the adjustment to the pattern piece to create the new cut line. So for this one we just want to extend a 1/4 inch to the left of the fold line. So I'm just going to place my ruler down. It has 1/8 inch marking grid lines, so I can just line this up with my fold line and then go ahead and draw my new cut line. And then I'll just go ahead and trim off the rest of this pattern piece right on the line that I just drew. And then now this becomes my new facing. So here are the 3 new pattern pieces: the front yoke, the inside front, which I'll cut from the denim, and then the facing, which I'll cut from the fur. And then for the collar, we just use the existing pattern piece, and I have cut one denim and cut one of the fur. And then here we have all the pieces cut out to make the jacket. So again, we have the collar cut one fabric, one fur lining, and then we have the front yoke, the new inside front, that new front facing, the other 2 pieces of the front, the sleeve and the cuff, and then the 3 pieces that make up the back. And we'd also have cut out the front pocket flap and the little tabs for the waistband. So now you're just going to want to follow the pattern instructions. The only difference at the beginning is that you sew the collar with the fur and the denim fabric right sides together. So all the way through to step 23, and then when you get to the step where you're going to attach the collar to the body of the jacket, that's where we'll pick up with this video, and I'll show you how to insert the steps for this front fur facing. Alright, so here we have the jacket completed up to step 23. I'm just going to attach the facing to the denim right along this center front seam line, and then we will continue with attaching the collar. So to attach the facing, you want to make sure that you have it lined up on the correct piece. So we have this point that points upward. Once it's folded back, is going to line up with that interior neckline. So we are going to put these right sides together, and we are going to straight stitch 1/4 inch seam allowance straight down the front. And you'll notice here as well that I have a basted stitch line right here just to mark my seam allowance line where that is going to fold back. And I went ahead and stitched my buttonholes prior to attaching this fur on the back because it is thicker and it will be harder to sew the buttonholes through both layers. So before I go ahead and stitch these, I will just pull out this basting stitch line. Alright, so we've gone ahead and attached the fur facing to the front. I've also gone ahead and with a very small zigzag finished the interior edges of the fur. This fur frays really heavily, so it's important to finish that raw edge. You could serge or zigzag that. You might have a fur or a fleece that doesn't fray, and then that interior edge is probably fine as is. So as we get to this point, you'll notice now that we have that complete neckline edge that points all the way back up so it can fold over onto itself. So we're going to go ahead and follow the pattern instructions to take the center point of the collar, lining that up with center back on the jacket, and we will pin that around the neckline up to that marking point on the pattern piece for the edge of the collar. Fold back the fur facing so that it overlaps a little bit of the collar, and then we'll stitch that down following the pattern instructions. And there we have that neckline seam stitched down. So you can see we have it stitched up at the beginning, at center front, and then all the way around the neckline. So we are just going to go in and then trim out these corners. I can trim down this interior seam allowance because I already have the collar seam allowance finished. So when we press that over and top stitch this on the front side, it'll cover that raw edge of the jacket body seam allowance. So I'll just trim that down so that it's shorter than my finished seam allowance. And then we will just push these to be right side out. And you can come in here with a point turner and push the denim out all the way, right up on that interior corner. And you'll notice that with that turned right side out, the fur itself pokes out over that front edge. So that gives it a nice finished look on the inside when the collar is flipped open, and then you can see the fur peeking out. So when the jacket is on, it will look fur lined for the whole entire jacket, even though the body itself is not lined. When you turn the facing right side out, you might notice that you have fur caught in that seam line. So you can see here how those threads are pulled down. So you can just carefully come in here with a seam ripper or a pin or anything that you could slide under there and just carefully pull those fur threads free so that they stick out and look a little more soft and fluffy instead of folded under inside that seam line. So you just want to do it careful and make sure that you're not grabbing the body of the fabric, just the fur threads themselves. Then once we have this turned right side out, we'll go ahead and just top stitch around this front edge and the neckline, and then continue and finish the jacket according to the rest of the pattern instructions. And here we have the completed jacket. I hope you guys have enjoyed this tutorial and will experiment with adding fur to your denim jacket.